you to this edition of the program. This is AM Prime here on WESN. I'm Andy Johnson. Let's tell you what's happening over the next hour and a half or so. We will be talking with Mr. Ruben Robertson. He's the representative for the Food and Agriculture Organization in Trinidad and Tobago. That's one of the UN agencies, and they're talking about a program just released, something called the Resilient School Feeding Program. They're working with the Ministry of Education. They're working with other stakeholders to make it easier to satisfy the nutrition needs of children in school in Trinidad and Tobago. What it means, a resilient school feeding program. We will get to that moments from now. We're also talking with Mr. Ronald Boynes. He is one of the candidates in these elections, for internal elections in the ruling party, the People's National Movement. He's going up to be the next chairman of the party. And one of the persons he'll be contesting that with is Minister Stuart Young, the man who is described by the Prime Minister as his all-rounder, as his Gary Sobers, and there are others in the race. So what a contest it will be. Why does Mr. Boynes want to get in that? You remember his brother was a minister in a PNM government, headed then by the late Patrick Manning. And we see something here in which they're not all on the best of terms, you would say, based on what we're looking at in how the Prime Minister has regarded it or has regarded him in the past. But we'll see what happens. And we're also talking with Ms. Antonia De Freitas. She's the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. We tried to have a discussion with her a couple of weeks ago after the government went to court to get the union to stop what it called its rest and reflection exercise, in which it was staying away from school on some days to make its own statement about where things are with the government's chief personnel officer in addressing salary and wage increases in the public sector. I think Ms. De Freitas is with us now. Good to see you, ma'am. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, sir. Good morning to your viewers and listeners. Thank you for having me. I do apologize for our last engagement ending so abruptly, but connectivity was extremely poor at that point in time.
You said you were in Tobago to make it a little more difficult.
Well, it was the location. Tobago is not as isolated as we think. It was just the location I was in and what I was engaged in. So I do apologize.
All right. Let me start by asking you, how do you respond to the Minister of National Security making a statement at a function just a couple of days ago in which he was reflecting on making a comment about some of what is happening in the country, and he talked about the action that your union has been taking and putting that against what people see as the need for the continued best possible education of the children. And he described your actions, or the union's actions, as unconscionable. How do you respond to that?
Well, to be honest, in the first instance, the union as a representative or as representing or comprising members, the members direct the action that we take at the level of the General Council. The members direct what the president is supposed to articulate on behalf of the union. That's no one man or one woman show. So whatever action that the association, the union would have taken in the past, recent past or further past, it is based on what the membership has asked to occur. That being said, however, if government policy, for any iteration of the government, if government policy is such that it would not take into consideration the working conditions and the standards of living of all citizens, not just educators, of all citizens, and the policy is such that there's no meaningful consultation as well on how we can address these issues, then workers, inclusive of educators, would do what they deem necessary to have attention brought to their circumstances. It is most unfortunate, Mr. Johnson, that in this country today, it appears that the only way to get attention of the policymakers is by being disruptive. And that's unfortunate for us as educators. That is not necessarily an activity we would want to be engaged in. So to pronounce on that now, when the government policy signals otherwise, that is what is unconscionable. Because at the end of the day, there's no consideration and no discussion with employees on how we could deal with current circumstances. Mr. Johnson, I think if, for example, the government had been serious about the NTAC initiative and having that kind of tripartite dialogue, then they would have made the efforts to have their representatives on that board, on that committee, attend the meetings and engage in discussion, rather than those persons being absent so that the committee had no quorum, etc. So it has a lot to do with government
that is what
policy.
happened. That is what happened. That's why some of the
That's correct.
the union
That's
representatives
correct. So
walked away from it.
When the trade union movement showed up for the meetings and you had some representatives of business, the wider economy sector there, you did not necessarily have the government representatives who were supposed to be on the committee, so that the committee required a quorum to function, and many times you did not have that. It signaled to us as the trade union movement they were not serious, and this is why the trade union movement withdrew from the entity.
Right. So how do you respond on that point to the president of the industrial court urging parties to go back and re-embrace the policy and the principle of, if not necessarily policy, the principle of tripartism? What is missing from that, and who's at fault for that?
Well, as I said, government policy and government action signal a lot to workers. Her Honor of the Court, Deborah Thomas Felix, has a very deep understanding of the value of tripartism. And I suppose that is why she would have made the call again, because as we look at jurisdictions around the world, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, and how the recovery has occurred at all sectors, there has been that level of tripartite engagement between the various entities to facilitate the recovery and the resilience building in the country. In our case, one organization, one entity, which is the government, wants to dictate everything and then find a problem when other sectors, because bear in mind, Mr. Johnson, it's not only the labor movement has complained about government policies, we've had the businessmen complain about government policies as well. So at the end of the day, is it that it's only the workers or the employees who are at fault? Are we going to take a deeper look at a nation, at government policies, some of which are designed to keep the economy buoyant? Yes, we will not deny that. But other policies and other actions designed to oppress and suppress, that's a discussion that we really need to have. And so to pronounce and to simply label without coming to the table, because I want to ask Minister Hines, has he engaged any educator? Has he sought to engage the union tutor, any other union, on matters that he thinks should not take place? Without that engagement, does one have the moral authority to pronounce? So these are things that we need to discuss as a country.
All right, I want to get to the center of the matter, which is the proposal on the table now of this 4% from the CPU. Both the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister saying that is the best that can be done, but there has to be, from what you all are saying in the trade union movement, there has to be discussion and sort of airing out of what the issues are inside of that before you get to accepting a position. But before we get there, you all have been talking, not necessarily you in an individual sense, but members of the movement have been talking about the absence of negotiations around the table. Describe a little bit of what you know as to what happens. So the 4% is at the table, but the sense is that there is no discussion around why that is where the government is, what the rationale for it is. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Johnson. And I want to return again to the issue of government policy, because if we had been engaging in discussions prior to the start of the negotiations process, there might very well have been an acceptance or an agreement or an understanding, at least by unions. This is how we can go forward in terms of economic resilience, etc. That being said, you know, in your household, we know in our households, in our work environments, negotiations occurs as a back and forth dialogue. You know, that can very well be cordial sometimes, but you try your best to either reach a win-win or a compromise the situation. In this instance, and I'm speaking this instance generally for the unions, in this instance, we have not had that kind of dialogue between the CPO, the representative of the state, and those unions representing public sector workers. The imposition of the 4%, and I have to clarify that, Mr. Johnson, in a little bit, the imposition of the 4%, even before The union has said, well, listen, we cannot budge anymore. We are not willing to dialogue anymore. Should be instructive to us as a signal that there are deeper governance issues that the state is grappling with, because you have the opportunity to continue dialogue. That being said, for some unions, it's not 4% to be negotiated. The state is offering 4% for a 6-year period, 2 consecutive 3-year periods. In the instance of tutor is negotiating for 1 period, the period 2014 to 2017. And therefore, if we use that approach and that logic, then tutor would be offered 2%. The other issue is that the unions that have been referred or supposedly referred to the Special Tribunal of the Industrial Court, as cited by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, are not unions that utilize the percentage approach to negotiations, Mr. Johnson. Those unions, tutor, fire, prisons, and police, those unions utilize what we call the external labor market survey approach as an agreement between the union and the CPO, an agreement between the union and the state on how they should negotiate. And those agreements have been long-standing, at least in the case of tutor. That agreement for how we negotiate has been very long-standing. So those unions had their matters, or will have their matters, I suppose, referred to the court, probably because there has not been enough planning and preparation for how you deal with unions who do the external labor market survey methodology in this current economic context. Very quickly, to give an explanation, if I may, Mr. Johnson.
Go ahead.
Your salary as a journalist, based on your qualifications and your knowledge criteria, is $100. My salary as an educator, having similar knowledge and qualifications, is $50. So we have the same basic entry requirements, perhaps in some instances similar job functions to a point, but the entry requirements are the same. You earn $100 based on what the market says, and I earn $50. The market survey will show that there is a gap between what I earn and what you earn of $50. Yeah? So what the unions who do the ELM ask for is the closure of the gap. Give us, if not the whole $50 difference, in this example, give us $40 difference. Give us $20 difference. Close the gap by some point so that what I earn, based on the same knowledge criteria that you have, would come close to what you earn. That's a simplified version of the methodology. So that with that in mind, these unions have utilized that more scientific approach, because we've compared jobs with similar knowledge criteria, etc. We've utilized this scientific approach and said to the government, for each union, this is how we want to close the gap. For tutor, we have asked for closure of that gap by about half. So the market says, Mr. Johnson, that what we as educators in the majority earn and what persons in the open sector earn, local open sector earn, that difference in the gap is between $5,000 and $6,000. In other words, an educator should have roughly $5,000 or $6,000 extra on his salary based on what the market says as of the period 2014 to 2017. Tutor is asking for half of that. Not the whole thing, not the whole $5,000 or $6,000. We're asking for half of that. We are also asking, and all unions have been asking, to consolidate COLA within the compensation package, thereby continuing to give these employees a buffer for the rising costs that they experience on a daily basis. The state has also refused to deal with that. Tutor.
When you say refused to, so those things are on the table coming from you all, and what is from
other unions, yes. And I just want to add, tutor and other unions have also signaled to the CPO in the last meeting we had, at least, If you cannot afford, if the state cannot afford to pay cash for the arrests that are due, because we are hearing large sums of money cited for arrests, if the state cannot afford to pay cash for the arrests, then let us use non-cash instruments, perhaps deferred payment options, so that you don't have to consider right now where I'm going to find money to pay the arrests for educators, the arrests for fire service officers, etc. Unions have put these options on the table to the CPO, and they have all been rejected.
You mean rejected or deferred for discussion? So where the CPO is saying that we're not going there, kind of thing?
The last engagement that Twitter had with the CPO, Mr. Johnson, we put those proposals that I signaled, iterations of those on the table. The CPO indicated he would take it back to his principals. That was sometime in early September. At this point in time, we have not received any communication from the CPO that the state is considering any proposal, and we have actually heard from the politicians the signal that the matter, our negotiations, would be sent to the Special Tribunal of the Industrial Court.
So where then are the statements made by the Minister of Finance in the budget presentation about monies that are there to take care of the arrears between 2000 and
well, Mr.
2010
Johnson,
and
that's
now?
that's a very curious thing indeed, because each year when the budget or before the budget is prepared, an assessment, an audit is done, if you will, of what should be expended by the state, for salaries and wages for all workers in the service, inclusive of if there are arrears to be paid. So it is most curious that we talk about not being able to factor this or that cost into the budget when we know beforehand what is required to be paid. Comes back, Mr. Johnson, to my previous point about government policy and the approach that this government is seeking to take on how it treats workers and employees.
So how do you respond then, again, to the notion in the society? I think people have written about it and asked the question about it. Prominent citizens such as JRP Dumas asking, well, where is it expected that the money will come from to meet what trade unions in this sector are asking for?
Well, two things, or there can be two responses to that, Mr. Johnson and viewers. One is that, again, the governments of the day made a decision. Twitter submitted its proposals back in 2015 for the period 14 to 17. The government decided, for whatever reason, to not engage in negotiations then. Likewise, a number of unions are negotiating for past periods, not current period where we are in 2022, past periods. So the government had a responsibility as the state employer to sit down and analyze the circumstances and determine back then how it was going to treat with negotiations for the different unions, inclusive of Twitter. So that has to do with government policy. Government policy would also dictate what they're finding money for. We found money very quickly to pay an attorney, a senior counsel to pay an attorney on the Sunday, the 25th, to have an injunction filed against educators for projected action. We found money, or we had money allocated, I don't know, for Independence and Republic Day celebrations. So whatever we want to find money for, we can find it. And therefore the narrative that, oh, this is going to break the economy by paying all of this amount of money, that is why unions put out the option of deferred payments, of bonds, interest-bearing bonds, and these kinds of instruments, so that you would not have had to, as a country, put out that large sum of money in one fell swoop. We had suggested that.
And the responses are not anywhere near satisfactory or even encouraging to get around the table to discuss them.
Precisely. Since the meeting Twitter had in early September, we have not had any other meeting or engagement with the Chief Personnel Officer on our negotiations. And as we've said, we've heard the politicians pronouncing on them. And I stress the politicians, Mr. Johnson, because for a matter of negotiations to be referred to the special tribunal, It must be that around the table, the CPO in this instance and the union would say, listen, we can't talk anymore. We have nothing else to talk about. There's no other movement we can make. And so it has to go to the special tribunal. That, at least with tutor, that did not happen. And the last engagement we had with the chief personnel officer, after we put our recommendations and our proposals, the last signal from that officer was he will take it back to his principals for discussion and give us a response.
So as it stands, you all are waiting to get a response from the CPO?
Well, to get a response from the CPO or to see if we will be formally notified that our negotiations have been sent to the court.
Yeah, and there's no way in hell, as people might say, that you all would do such that the Amalgamated Workers Union is done and say, okay, if this is the best we can do, we will take it.
In the case of Amalgamated Workers Union, I believe it's the president who did the signing off, perhaps without consultation. I wasn't there, I don't know. But as you said, to use your term, there's no way in hell that could happen with tutor. The membership of the union have to come together, discuss the matter, and give the directive to the general counsel, which will then give the directive to the negotiating team. Listen, go ahead and sign for 2% or go ahead and seek conciliation as the case may be. And I want to say the Minister of Finance signaled that as an option, and we are waiting to see how that will play out. The membership of tutor has to give that directive to the general counsel and thereafter to the negotiating team. No one officer can do that signing on behalf of the union.
All right, so you're waiting for what signal?
Well, right now, having heard the signal from the politicians that the matter is being referred to the special tribunal, we are waiting to see if that will really happen and if we will receive official notification on that particular stage of the process.
All right, we want to thank you very much for weighing in on the issue at this point. Thank you very much, Ms. Antonia.
Thank you for having me. Be safe, everyone.
The President of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. We will take a break, and when we come back, we get into our discussion with Mr. Ronald Boynes, who is going up in these elections in the People's National Movement for the position of chairman. Stay with us.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
It's Diwali time again, and that means delicious vegetarian cuisine. Chief has all your herbs and spices for Diwali. Curry, jeera, saffron, garam masala and more for all your tal curry. Cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, ginger and cardamom for those delectable sweets. Brown rice, dal and chana for those tasty delicacies. And of course, Chief baking powder for soft and light roti. This Diwali, remember, the chief reason is always taste.
With society plagued by a host of
Welcome back to the program. We could tell you now that there's no Newsday poll, but we could tell you what's on the front page of the front pages and the back pages of those papers, the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago and the Newsday Tobago. Well, let's just show you what's on the front page of the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago on this day. And on the back page, the story on the front page in which the Prime Minister is saying that the UNC is searching for scandal. He's responding to this claim by opposition Senator Nakib that he was under police probe for something or the other. And in the Tobago Newsday, just bath suits and beads, band leaders upset about mass in Tobago. The fuss they're making about it, the big carnival in Tobago coming up, and that's on the back page. But right now, we get to talking with Mr. Ronald Boynes. He's the brother of a man named Roger Boynes, who, of course, we will remember was a minister in the government of Trinidad and Tobago in a previous PNM administration. He was Minister of Sport for most of that time. Mr. Boynes has entered the political fray, as they say, and is running for this position of chairman of the party, and one of the people he's going up against, as we said in the introduction, is none other than Mr. Stuart Young, the man described by the Prime Minister as his Gary Sobers, his all-rounder, his best performer. And that's I put in that there to that's my summation of what the Prime Minister said, the way he has communicated that. Ronald Boynes, candidate for the position of chairman in the People's National Movement. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Andy. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. Let me begin, Andy, by with all love and consideration, correcting the statement that you made. I am going up for the position of political leader.
Political leader?
Of the People's National Movement.
All right.
That is correct.
Okay.
so I will not be facing Gary Sobers on this occasion.
All right. And you were one of the four people in that contest to try and unseat the Prime Minister as political leader of the party. What a gamble that is. I mean, there's never been a situation in which you have a Prime Minister who's not the political leader of the party that he leads. This is unique, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, Andy, I don't consider it to be a gamble. I have looked at the needs of the party primarily, needs of the country by extension. And I think it is the right thing to do at this time. I think that there is a disconnect between the leadership of our party and the people, the ground troops, as it were, the basic units of the party, as Dr. Eric Williams referred to the party group and others. And so I've come in here really to provide the type of leadership that would continue to inspire our people, and also the kind of leadership that would really ensure that the People's National Movement remain in power going forward.
All right. All right. Give us a little history about your involvement in the party, because one of the things I'd seen, it's coming through looking at preparing for the discussion, that the Prime Minister is said to have said somewhere, questioned your loyalty to the party. You said you were of another party at some point in the future. Now you come back to the PNM, questioning your, I would say, loyalty and the suitability of this candidacy?
Well, Andy, as you're aware, politics is not a tea party or for the faint-hearted. And to some extent, indeed, to some extent, you're in the political guile. The facts of the matter is that I have been a card-carrying, dues-paying member of the PNM for over 25 years continuously. The Prime Minister is aware of that, and as I said, I don't take anything fundamental about that. It's just part of the political process.
Yeah. So not that it matters, right? Not that it matters, but were you in fact ever a member of the UNC?
Yes. Prior to joining the PNM, these 25 years ago, I did briefly join the UNC. But after some weeks of consideration of that position, I tendered my resignation and forever turned my back on that entity.
Yeah.
Right? So for these 25 years, and as I said, I welcome people of all stripes. People come in at 11 o'clock on one day as UNC, and by 12 o'clock the next day at PNM, and I embraced.
Yeah.
I have been a member of this great party for 25 continuous, unbroken, dedicated years. And I am proud of the service that I've been able to bring to the party during that time.
Yeah, and in fact, that matter should not be held against you, because there's somebody else in this race in another position who came to us in the country as a member of a party that was, fundamentally opposed to the PNM at the time, the National Alliance for Reconstruction, talking with Ken Butcher, and I'm not hearing any stuff about where he was before.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Or even my good friend Winston Gypsy Peters, who contested a seat on behalf of the PNM. He lost the seat. But the fact is that if he were to be a member of parliament, it could conceivably be that he could have gone on to become prime minister once he had his support. And, you know, as I said, he was a dedicated upfront minister in the government of the UNC administration. So I am quite comfortable where I am in terms of my service to the party, my dedication, and most importantly, what I bring to the table in this season.
So let's talk about some of that. Let's talk about some of that,
yes.
and what you bring to the fray.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and as you're aware, I was chairman of the San Grande Regional Corporation for 7 years, appointed as alderman chairman by the late Patrick Manning, supported by my council. And one of the things we did, and of which we are most proud, and which I think will give a clear indication as to the type of leadership that I will bring to the party and to the nation ultimately, was the San Grande Strategic Development Plan. Now, as you're aware, San Grande then, which would have been around 2003 to 2010 when I was chairman, San Grande then was considered, or is considered to be, was then and now considered to be the poorest municipality in the country. Some 40% of the people, earn less than $1,000 a month. So considered to be below the poverty line. Notwithstanding the rich resources of the region, notwithstanding, of course, the flora, fauna, the potential for international ecotourism that the region possesses, this situation occurred. So we did as a council say, well, okay, well, let's inventory all of that. Let's put it in terms of a vision that creates a possibility for execution. Take it to the people, because there had been many visions done before, but I didn't want to sit in an office in the heart of Grande and concoct or devise a vision. We took it out to the people. We went to all 13 secondary schools in the region, about 17 primary schools, all 41 communities, and got buy-in and so on, and amendments here and there. And ultimately, my line minister, the very distinguished Hazel Manning, took this to cabinet, and it was approved. It became the first strategic development plan that originated in a region, debated among the people, and put forward by the corporation, and ultimately got approval by the highest decision-making body in the land.
So that's when she was. That's when she was Minister of Local Government, right?
Correct. She was my line minister then, Minister of Local Government. And as you might be aware, Andy, because I know you have a developmental thrust in terms of your journalistic exploits. This development plan was used as the template and became the basis for the appointment of other regional planners for the other corporations throughout the country, other municipalities throughout the country. And I actually think it is a good template. As I said, it speaks to inventorying what is in the region that could be addressed. In our case in Grande, it was agriculture, ecotourism. We have some of the most diverse species, flora, fauna in our region. Aggregate. San Grande possesses almost over 22% of the coastline of Trinidad. So it is great potential for fishing, deep sea fishing, and all of that. But the problem is, and I always say, leadership matters. Visionary leadership matters. It cannot be, God bless us that we have made extraordinary wealth from the energy sector. But diversification, quite frankly, should have been and should urgently be on the front burner. These regions are waiting to have their resources, fully utilized, exploited, as it were, for the benefit of the people. But in my view, it is not being targeted. There is not support for these development plans. There is not support for meaningful decentralization of authority, where you vest power and autonomy with guidance from central government or with suggestions from them in communities.
But I think that takes us back. That was the period in which these plans were called spatial development plans for each regional corporation. And she went around the country, because I had the good fortune of having to moderate some of those sessions in Rio Claro and in Samo, and I think in San Grande as well. So that's what you're talking about. So those things are lying fallow somewhere there after all these years. Dr. Henry was involved in that, Mr. Tracy, I'm trying to remember his last name, but so they were two of the principal experts on the thing, and they were meetings held in different parts of that's what you're talking about. So that is still there as an ambition that is just has remained idle.
Yes, it is. And I do recall you presented in Sangre Grande when we presented our strategic development plan then. And yes, so that is lying idle. You see, Andy, we tend to talk development. We tend sometimes to get annoyed by terms like diversification. But to me, the hard work needs to be done. We have a template for so doing. We need to engage our regional development planners. We need to go out there really inspiring our communities to go forward and to be the best that they can be. In our case in Grande, for example, one of the suggestions that came out of our development plan was really repair the agricultural access routes, because so that the farmers can get their produce out to market quickly, efficiently. This project, it was costed by the inspectors at the Sangre Regional Corporation, but again, it languished. We approach these things in a very piecemeal fashion.
So how can somebody forget all of that and simply want to focus on the fact that you may have been a member of another party for a brief period? That's politics, right?
Yeah, it's politics. It is politics, and you see, and I embrace what I call the fierce urgency of now. To me, the 25 years that I have been a member of the party, one too many people have died in this country. Year go, year come, and it's getting worse. The basic party structures have been disregarded. As I mentioned before, the party groups are the basic units of the party, but we find a whole atmosphere of disrespect and disregard for our long-serving, hard-working party members, which should not be. Because, as I said, our great founder, Dr. Eric Williams, in his wisdom, created this structure, which I consider to be a fantastic structure, that really should ensure that the PNM does not lose any election. But it speaks to respect for our hardworking members who go from house to house and secure votes and win and influence people. But their voices must be heard. So when you have the leadership, not listening to them, or the price of gas might be increased. I mean, some things may need to be done, but then laughing at them because the increases, because they have not rioted yet. How does that play on the ground? Does that represent the ethos of our foot soldiers? It doesn't. If our foot soldiers, and again I come back to the development plan, if our foot soldiers embrace it, because in Grande we got the constituency as distinct from the corporation. Submitted that plan to the leadership of the party, because they debated among themselves. They went on retreat in Tobago, and so quite distinct. So it was a very vibrant scenario that we created there. And again, the voices must be listened to. So as leader, I will bring that perspective and that whole environment back into the party, create respect for our members, because there's wisdom in the marketplace. And people, by and large, know what they want. They have a sense of when they're not getting what they want or need. And quite frankly, and this is our need. So we can't be focusing on nebulous, irrelevant things when bodies are falling literally, businesses are on life support, and we have not yet activated the commanding heights of our economy and unleash the true potential of our people.
All right, you're not the only one to be saying some of what you're saying there, that there's a disconnect, there's a gap between the leadership of the party and the membership of the party. But if the Prime Minister, in his capacity as political leader of the PNM, were to call a meeting now for the next hour, the place will be full of people. Why is that?
Well, power matters, obviously, but I'm not sure in what context you're speaking, because, you see, leadership speaks to influence, not power or bullying, right? So influence, do the words I say resonate? Are my words true? But then if I possess the power, I could command certain things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the hearts are with me. So the point I'm making to you is that as a leader, I will seek to influence the people by the example of what I do, present the vision to them, get their input and buy-in, and move quickly to execute it. There's no reason why a developmental plan for any of our municipalities, all 14 of them, should be languishing for years and years and years. And we not appreciate the fierce urgency of now to put power in the hands of the people.
And you're saying that in his performance as political leader of the party, Dr. Rowley has not been doing that, and because there has been, these other comments that there is this sense of estrangement from people.
Yes, there is. There is. There's a whole atmosphere of fear and apprehension. People offer themselves for office. And the thing about it is that in a prior dispensation, when we vying for offices, in fact, it was a joy. What team got defeated, everybody put up a slate. But in this sense, you get the impression that if you step out of line, if you are not in line with what is happening by the current leadership of the party, that you will be victimized, you will be called, there will be nothing for you. This is the reality. And as leaders, we need to be very careful whether that is the signal that we are sending, whether deliberately or inadvertently, right? Because that speaks to democracy. We are a party blessed with beautiful, wonderfully talented people who are prepared to serve and give their best. And we have to make sure that they are encouraged to do that in a vibrant environment of cut and thrust. And that is part of the reason why, as we look at the state of affairs of our nation, it is where it is. We cannot be satisfied as to where it is, whether in terms of the murder rate, what is happening in these at-risk communities. Most of them have been, critical and diehard supporters of our party, who have never wavered in their support. But have we delivered to them? Have we engaged in developmental imperatives as far as these communities are concerned? And have we moved quickly and decisively and aggressively to address their concerns and their areas?
I want to ask you a question about what something is happening that is most current. It's the hottest thing around now. And the sense is the idea is to get a sense of as to how that issue is playing inside the party, in the People's National Movement on this day as we speak. This question of the issue involving the former Attorney General and this indemnity matter. I'm not sure if to call it scandal or whatever it is, but it's a big issue with this matter involving that attempt to go after the former Attorney General and Ram Logan. How is that issue you think playing inside the party? Is it a matter that is being discussed at all, in the party as to what may have happened and the impact of how it will turn out on the party, or if not?
Well, Andy, anything in the public domain that casts a negative light on the party is always cause for concern. But I'm aware, and certainly I want to be responsible, that the situation is playing out itself. Facts are emerging, and sometimes rather than rush to judgment when you have 25% of the facts or 10% or even 40, 50%, it is for mature consideration to look at all the circumstances, all the facts. We have obviously one prime minister at a time who is head of the cabinet, and the honorable prime minister, I don't know, he's yet to speak fully on it. So quite frankly, though as a party member, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I would obviously be concerned as to what is playing out in the public domain. But I prefer, as a responsible individual as well, to listen to all the facts. But I want to speak to a larger issue as well, as I said, in terms of...
you'll get there. But let me just put to you, in one of the papers this morning, in the Newsday newspaper this morning, there's a story on page 3 of the paper. The headline is the Prime Minister saying that this matter is not a matter for the business of the cabinet. So we were talking about whether it is a business, how people see it might have an impact on the party, but he's saying it's not a matter for the cabinet. How could that be correct?
All right. Well, as I said, I have not seen the newspaper article, and really, what is the basis for the Prime Minister making that statement? So I prefer to learn more about it. Ultimately, as a leader, in some quarters you see the buck stops with you, but in some quarters, that clearly is a clear statement that as leader. But I don't have the advantage of seeing that article to which you refer.
Yeah.
So I prefer, as a responsible individual, to get all the facts.
All right. So you're going on to make another point.
Right. So yes. So as I said, contextually, I'm making the wider point that as a nation that we we subscribe to the principles, equity, justice, fairness, transparency. Those are the objectives. I mean, we are in our human feelings. We sometimes obviously don't attain those lofty standards, but there must be continuously vying towards achieving those objectives: transparency, honesty, integrity in public life, accountability. And sometimes when you, as a general matter, situations occur, and it really could represent, in my view, sometimes a deviation from those lofty ideals. When you assume public office, it is really, it's not your personal playground or personal plaything. When you assume party office, you really put yourself on the line to represent the interests of the members. And from a party office, of course, that's how we select our members of parliament, etc. So it's a process that is designed really to ensure that people from the ground up, you get their views, it is converted into policy and programs for the benefit of the nation as a whole. It is a sacred task. So my view is that we will really seek to get our best people, listen to them, take into account their concerns, and really engage their creativity and energy to build this nation and to really take it forward in a meaningful way.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Mr. Boynes, Ronald Boynes, one of 4 people challenging for the position of political leader in the ruling party. We want to talk with you on the other side of this, however it shakes out. But thank you very much.
Certainly. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, we're going to take a break. I think we'll come back before we go to the news in a couple of minutes from now. But stay with us. This is AM Prime on this Friday morning.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Diwali is in the air again, and Royal Castle reminds you to try its yummy veggie burger. The Royal Castle veggie burger is great on its own or in a combo with a side and a 16-ounce drink. And it's healthy too. A nutritious patty made with oats, lentils, chana, potatoes, and carrot. Inside a soft bun with tomatoes and lettuce. So for this season, try the Castle's tasty and healthy veggie burger. Shubh Diwali from Royal Castle.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide, but do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport, October 3rd to October 23rd, with replays on October 24th. It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Well, Welcome back. As we head up to the top of the hour, let's just make this quick stop in St. Lucia, where we see the Prime Minister warning against the abuse of barrel concessions intended to bring relief to people in that country. Let's take a look at this.
Parliament convened on Tuesday to debate and vote on the annual barrel concessions intended to provide relief to households. But the head of government cautioned against the abuse of the facility by those bent on bringing firearms and narcotics into St. Lucia.
Do not use these barrels to send out anything except food. And this is serious. This is serious, Mr. Speaker, because several times, and I'm not saying telling tales of the school, it was in the public domain, that other items were found in these barrels that are not food, that are not care packages, that are not toys. And this is spoiling the reputation of the country. This is because of selfishness, Mr. Speaker. And if that continues, we may affect the majority of people because of a few selfish people who want to get their pockets lined by not following the law and doing what is right.
Barrel concessions begin come November 1st, 2022, and will run until February 28th, 2023. The government of St. Lucia sought parliamentary approval to apply tax exemptions to specific items contained within barrels, such as personal items, food, clothing, toys, and other household consumables.
Mr. Speaker, the resolution is to approve the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Mr. Speaker, and that is to allow relatives and friends abroad to be able to send food and household items, not televisions or electronic equipment specifically, but care packages for their needy ones in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker.
But it's not just about issuing a warning, says MP for Choiseul Saltibus Bradley Felix, who challenges the ruling regime to ensure that equipment is in place to keep the sanctity of the barrel concession program intact.
The Prime Minister made a very important point with regards to the contents of the barrel, where people try to take advantage, and in that case, sometimes Peter pays for Paul. I'm hoping that there's also going to be some additional investment in, I think it's called an extreme, whatever it is, scanning here with regards to that, Mr. Speaker, because that's critical in terms of identifying, some of these illicit items that come into the country. But we welcome, and Mr. Prime Minister, I thank you very much, and we'll try to see how we can continue to support the people that we represent.
Prime Minister and Minister for National Security, Philip J. Pierre, described this year's barrel concession as one of particular importance, given the global rising cost of living.
And with that, we're going to take a break for the news at the top of the hour, on the other side of which we'll be talking with Mr. Ruben Robertson. He's the country representative for the Food and Agriculture Organization in Trinidad and Tobago. They just launched an initiative called the Resilient School Feeding Program. We'll tell you much about that on the other side. Stay with us.
Is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Tobago minority leader speaks on inter-island fare increase. Promoters facing challenges ahead of Tobago Carnival. Belmont man charged with murder. And internationally, 2 die outside Slovakia's LGBT club. Now for the details. Tobago Minority Leader Kelvin Morris is in agreement with the fare increase between Trinidad and Tobago. Speaking on WESN's AM Prime, he said though the increase could be difficult for some, he understands the necessity.
I wish we did not have to have an increase in the prices at this time, but at the same time, I understand that both the sea bridge and the air bridge is heavily subsidized, and because the country, the economy, like the world, is basically under pressure at this time, the government has no choice but to look at areas as to where they can reduce expenditure, and the air and sea bridge is one of those areas that is heavily subsidized.
Vice Chairman of the Promoters Association, Kwesi Trim, says Tobago promoters are facing challenges in hosting events for the upcoming Tobago Carnival. He spoke with state media on the issue.
The pressure of putting on successful events really took a toll on promoters, and we needed the headliner artists to really draw the crowd, especially for the first year we have in this Tobago Carnival.
He said the events all being in close proximity with each other is also proving to be a major hurdle.
All the events are kind of jam-packed from, let's say, the weekend of Diwali straight on to the end of the season, and it is something that our lack of experience have factored into it. We would have liked where each day may have had 2-3 events, but now we are all clashing. It's going to be a difficult season because, you know, the Tobago market isn't that great or that large to kind of satisfy what a promoter may need.
A Belmont man appeared before a Port of Spain magistrate today charged with the murder of Shawndell Thomas, which occurred on October 4th. Akil Morel of Bella Road was charged with the offence following advice received from the DPP. Thomas of St. Bob's Road, Belmont, was walking in the district on October 3rd when he approached a group of men and allegedly became verbally and physically abusive towards one of them. During the altercation, the victim allegedly pushed the man into the path of an oncoming vehicle. The car avoided coming into contact with the man, who then allegedly stabbed the victim. The victim was taken to the Port of Spain General Hospital for treatment. He subsequently died the next day. The accused surrendered himself to officers of the Homicide Bureau of Investigations. In international news, 2 people have died after a shooting outside an LGBT venue in Slovakia's capital, Bratislava. A 3rd person was wounded in the attack on Wednesday evening near the Telparan bar close to the city center. The suspected gunman was found dead on Thursday morning, police said. Information on his motive has not been released. However, local media reported that he had written social media posts indicating that he held views against LGBT and Jewish people. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for watching.
Saturday, November 5th, Shore Park, Tobago. It's Million Laughs Caribbean Comedy Commerce, the mega laugh festival to end the Tobago Carnival season, featuring Tobago's finest in folklore and musical entertainment, together with some of the Caribbean's top comedians, Larry Joseph, Daryl the Saint Mendoza, Dolores, Alan the Entertainer, Handsome Sun, Mako Media, and more. Get your ticket specials available on Island E-Tickets and various outlets nationwide, or visit the Million Laughs handles for more info. It's Comedy Commerce in Tobago, a wee kind of commerce.
Welcome back in the program. Let's just tell you this. More flexibility is needed for policies overseeing the supply of local produce for the National School Feeding Program. And that's the word from Mr. Reuben Robertson. He's the Food and Agriculture Organization representative for Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname. He recently launched a program called the Resilient School Feeding Program. He said that currently there aren't fixed contractual agreements between farmers and the National Schools Dietary Services. The agency in charge is implementing, that's the agency in charge of implementing school lunches for around 70,000 students registered for the program. The Resilient School Feeding Program, an initiative of the FAO in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Robertson is our guest to expand on that with us in this edition of the program. Good to see you, sir. Let's talk about it.
Yes, good morning, Andy, and pleasure for having me again on your program.
Yes.
And good morning to our listeners across Trinidad and Tobago.
So it's good to have you to talk about something as this, because you remember at the launch of the discussions we had, I was asking about the use of the term resilient, and I was saying, because other people, you know, on my side of the table, as it were questioning the sustainability of this and the genuineness of the use of this term. If you're talking about resilience, what does that mean, and how will that affect what you're seeking to do?
Well, I think this is, the resilience term is used on multiple fronts.
Right.
Because currently the farmers who supply the school feeding program, they are confronted with a number of challenges, including the events of climate change. Most recently, we saw the excessive rainfall and flooding, which affect the agricultural production in most cases. So there's always that risk of burst and boom among the farmers. When you have the burst, that is flood out, you have increasing prices due to low and shortage of supply. And then prices increase and pose a serious stranglehold, I would say, on the school feeding program, because the budget is already aligned from the beginning of the year. And the contracts to the service providers are made upfront based on particular prices. And so any increase or trigger in the price of the food items result in a stress on the program, because there is so much that can be purchased with the limited allocation. The second point is that of the involvement of the school children themselves, in the sense that the notion is there that young people do not want to get into agriculture because of the laborious work, the drudgery. And so to reduce that, we want to introduce, just like we are doing for the farmers, the sort of technologies that will help to build resilience to climate change. And so this morning, we will be demonstrating at the Barataria School, together with the Barataria Community Council, the 4-H, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, how some of these technologies, using hydroponics, using what we call greenhouse type of structures to produce vegetables, can help to build resilience over time. And at the same time, the technology can be used to encourage our young people to become engaged in agriculture, therefore allowing for sustainability. So hence, when we speak about resilience, that's the kind of context in which we speak.
Because I was just going to ask whether resilience in this case is synonymous with sustainability, because you want to launch a program, you want to get a program going that would have some life into the future in terms of addressing this question about school feeding.
Precisely. And introducing the resilience program is a twofold effect that we are looking for. One is the interest created among the young people to get involved in this new technology to produce their own food and to consume it, and at the same time to encourage their parents, who may be farmers or backyard growers, to produce similar foods using these kind of techniques, so that we can enhance the overall food and nutrition security for all.
Yeah, and come back to the point you make about the sense traditionally, or maybe for a part in our existence, that this question that young people don't find agricultural pursuits very sexy. But at this very moment, at this juncture, so you have accreditation in Suriname as well. So you may have been at the last CARICOM summit in Suriname, where the involvement of young people in agriculture was seen as an absolute requirement and a necessity if we had to go forward on these issues about food security and about moving away from our high dependence on imports in feeding ourselves, right?
Yes, definitely. And it's really a two-pronged approach in the sense that agriculture is a science. And therefore, because most of our farmers now are aged, there is that resistance to some extent and slow take-up of innovation and technology. They want to see it proven first before they enter into such investments. Whereas if we are able to educate the young people and to stimulate their interest in the science and the technology, I think that will be an easy fix for transforming the food systems. And hence, engagement of young people is not only just to have them involved in the agriculture per se, but to be able to look at the future for a sustainable agriculture development using science and technology.
Right, and the project aims to reach, the figure put here, 70,000 students who are registered for the program. What percentage of the cohort now that you know is dependent on programs such as these to meet their requirement, their dietary needs as they go to school?
Well, let us back up a little bit. There is an ongoing program, as I indicated, and the statistics show a little more than 70,000 when we compare, well, when we add Tobago together with the Trinidad.
Yes.
It could well be about 85,000 students. And what the NSDL, who is running an excellent program in collaboration with the other agencies of government and FAO, what they are trying to do is to get a greater percentage of the inputs into the daily meal coming from local production. And this is really interesting because we are seeing some growth over the last few years where more experiments are being done to test the use with the children of the local commodities. And so their target is to have at least 40 to 50% over time. And we will be happy through this resilient program to really stimulate that by getting the children to grow and eat what they grow. And in so doing, they too can help with the parents and the communities increasing the domestic consumption of these commodities that are produced locally. Yeah. So it is really an interesting question in the sense that as it stands now, the food, the diet, it constitutes both a combination of what is imported and what is produced locally, with the local production being on the lower end. But suffice to say, though, that even some of the commodities that are imported are somewhat quasi-local production. So, for example, we have macaroni, we have chow mein, and some of those other commodities which are used in the meal. Those are produced locally, but the flour is imported. So there's a combination of these things which are difficult to set apart in terms of what is the imported component vis-a-vis the truly local components. But I think we are onto a good thing in that we are seeing movements where local production is increasing in the school feeding program.
You call the figure about 40%. What does that represent? That's the number.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, 40%. What we are saying is that when you look at the composition of the meal, the different ingredients used, we are looking at balanced diets. So the six food groups, be it the carbohydrates, proteins, vitamin, minerals, and so on. What we are saying is that those foods that constitute those groups must come from local supply.
Yeah, and you're talking about the mechanism by which local farmers are going to be selected or have been selected, and working with the organization to bring this thing about in a real sense?
Yes, there is ongoing work where the NSDSL is working closely with NAMDEFCO. NAMDEFCO has a selected group of farmers who they buy from. We are trying to expand this through a certification program where more farmers can come on board through compliance with certain standards, so that we can ensure that when the supply from these farms come to the school feeding program through the service providers, that it is safe and healthy food, which can contribute to the growth and development of our young people.
And so how are you doing that?
Well, there are mechanisms for doing that, where there are set standards of compliance where that the farmers have to meet in order to be certified. So, for example, if a farmer is supplying the school feeding program, he cannot use certain pesticides, that is to spray the crop. And if certain pesticides are to be used, they must be approved, and they must be used in the right proportions at the right time. If they are harvesting, they cannot harvest and wash the produce with water that is not tested, so that we know that it is free from different types of bacteria, coliform and otherwise. So it must come from a reliable source, perhaps tap water, which is tested and approved, so that the food can be safe at all times. So these are the kind of intricacies that we will be working with these farmers to ensure that they are not only trained, but we are, since we are going through the training programs now, of which over 100 farmers across Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago have been trained, but also to get onto the farms, to work with the farmers to make sure that they can adhere and become compliant to these practices.
And who would be the persons getting onto the farms and working with the farmers, so that you'll have to recruit people to do that? How will that
well, it's a combination of factors. We would have an expert that will be contracted from the FAO, and we have some support under some financial support under the CAF, that is the Latin America Development Bank, which is piloting some innovation and technology, the certification program being one of them with FAO, and NAMDEFCO, which is already in the lead. Instead of, we will use NAMDEFCO, since they have the responsibility for championing this particular program. And we will also be working along with ICA, that also has some expertise, and together with the farmers and agricultural extension officers. So it is really what I consider to be a compact with all of these agencies working together for a common good. So we are hoping that these farmers who are identified through a selective process will be worked with, mentored, and be able to meet these requirements.
And ICA, of course, stands for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture.
Yes, that's the kind of collaboration that we forge on this particular initiative.
Is ICA sort of, it never came to mind to find that out. Is ICA sort of an Inter-American unit within the FAO? Is that it?
No. ICA is an independent organ. They operate in Latin America and the Caribbean, whereas FAO is a global institution.
Right, but I thought maybe the ICA was original. So ICA is a part of the Inter-American machinery system.
Machinery. And the way we work is that sometimes, because ICA may have the expertise, rather than bringing in somebody from overseas, as we usually say, external to Trinidad and Tobago, we may use ICA from time to time through what we call letters of agreement. Similarly, we may use the University of the West Indies to carry out certain technical support functions from time to time.
And the FAO is a UN organization.
Yes, the FAO is a UN organization directly responsible for reducing hunger, food and nutrition insecurity.
Yeah. What is the level of uptake and the sense of enthusiasm among the local farming community to the introduction of this program?
Well, I think that they're very enthused. We have had this training program. A lot of issues have been raised, some of which are addressing the whole issue of policy. As I mentioned before, one of the critical elements in agriculture production is water. And having the appropriate quality, amounts and quality of water for use, not only in the production realm, but also in the harvesting and processing, is a critical issue that will have to be given some consideration at the policy level. And I think this has been raised by farmers, well echoed, and we are working together with all the necessary organs to ensure that some resolution is brought to this issue.
Yeah, when it says that there aren't currently fixed contractual agreements between farmers and the National Schools Dietary Services Program, so you all wanted to fix that and to have the arrangements more sort of tightly agreed upon. And how many farmers we're talking about in the final analysis being involved in this initiative?
Well, I would say there's less than 100 farmers who are currently involved, while there are quite a number of farmers who work closely with NAMDEFCO. They have more than 1,200 farmers listed on their database. Just a little less than 100 that supply directly to the school feeding program across the country. And what we are trying to do is to up this ante to really get more of the smaller farmers who can find the school feeding program for perhaps 210 days of the year as their main market to supply. And therefore will have no difficulties in terms of having to depend on wholesalers at their particular price that are being offered to allow for their sustainability. Remember, overall, what we are trying to do is not only just to link the production to a particular market, but to sustain the income earning capacity of the smaller farmers, because the objective here is to ensure that no one is left behind. And because these small farmers are very vulnerable to the vagaries of price variations and so on, we want to ensure that at least for most of the year, they will have a price that they can actually be satisfied with, and they can continue to produce and supply to this particular market.
Yeah, we got to go in a minute, but I just want to ask, based our last discussion had to do with the piece that you had written that got published in one of the newspapers. You were rhapsodizing about what you call the wonderful varieties of bananas, the figs as we call them in the Caribbean. And I'm asking, to what extent some of those varieties will become part of these diets eventually that you're promoting in talking about healthy eating, dietary development for people, young people in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I just came back from Tobago last night, and I must say that I'm very enthused with the work that we are doing with the Tobago House of Assembly Department of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment, and the Sustainable Development. The secretary and her team there, we have an excellent plot of bananas intercropped with sweet potatoes. We have about 40 bunches start bearing down there now. We have about 800 mats per se. And we are looking to take this to the next level. We're not only demonstrating that bananas can be grown commercially, but we are also showing that the bananas can be ripened at good quality and made available to the people in Tobago. So hopefully in November, we will have a field day to demonstrate some of this. I've taken the responsibility, not to promote myself, but taking the responsibility because of my technical expertise in some of these commodities to go on the ground to do it myself.
Yes.
To work along with the technical staff and the farmers, the workers at the Kendall farm to make sure that this happens. So hopefully we will have a demonstration to show that bananas can be grown successfully by managing the black sigatoka disease and some of the other challenges.
All right, we got to leave it there. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Reuben Robertson, representative of the FAO, that's the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
If I have 1 second just before I go, we have an open day today at the office. So we are inviting members of the public, government, private sector, NGOs. The schools, unfortunately, they are closed today. We have a prize giving for ceremony for those persons, those children who participated in the art and the essay competition on leaving no one behind, better production, better nutrition, better environment, better life.
All right.
So we are happy to be on your program, sir. And we now go to Barataria where we launch the school feeding plan, the school garden competition, which will take about a year or so.
All right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will talk again.
Thank you.
We take a break. Before we wrap it up, stay with us.
Shopping at Price Club from the beginning. I love most of all the friendliness of the staff.
I shop there because my children love meat and I love it.
My favorite section is the vegetarian section. They have such a wide variety, which I love.
I have been out shopping, to check out the prices, but here at the Lewis, it's the best.
I have tried other places and I came right back to Price Club because they are the low price leader.
All right, so we want to thank you for watching. We want to thank all our guests and asking you to continue to stick around here. Well, we leave you from this edition of the program with this. Trinidadian trumpeter and master musician Etienne Charles was recently commissioned to write a full work for the New York Philharmonic. That's how we're going to leave you on this edition of the program. I'm Andrew Johnson. Thanks for being with us and continue to stay with us.
My name is Etienne Charles. I am a composer and trumpet player as well as band leader from Trinidad and Tobago. So on October 8th, we'll be doing the world premiere of my latest piece, San Juan Hill, a New York Story. A piece of music that features my group Creole Soul as well as the New York Philharmonic. The neighborhood San Juan Hill in the 1920s going on, it was one of the cultural capitals of New York City. And my hope with the piece is that more people get interested in understanding the magic of this neighborhood and the magic of the people who built the culture. A big part of what we know as New York culture.
WESN.
Diwali Passport, brought to you by Benjamin Moore.
If these walls could talk,
they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
The Festival of Lights glows once again in many nations. Let's take a trip and find the interesting variations. Some are quiet and simple, and others filled with family and friends. Join us now for Diwali Passport on WESN. Once again, our adventure finds us heading to South America. Just minutes away from our Guyanese neighbors is the smallest sovereign state in South America, Suriname. Suriname was inhabited by various indigenous peoples, the largest tribes being the Caribs and the Arawaks. The country was once ruled by the British and then the Dutch until it became an independent country. But in spite of its strong European ties, culturally, Suriname is considered a Caribbean country and is a member of CARICOM. With a small population of less than 600,000, the country has a mixture of races, the main groups being Indian, the majority of the population, followed by the Maroons of African origin and Javanese from Indonesia. An interesting note here is that Suriname is the only sovereign nation outside of Europe where Dutch is the official language. Indo-Surinamese are also called Hindustani, and with 35 to 40% Hindus, Diwali is one of the most popular Indian festivals and also a public holiday. The celebration of Diwali in Suriname is not as traditional as that observed in India, but the usual distribution of sweets, the exchange of greetings, cleaning of houses, and dressing up is the norm like other countries. There are a few parts of the country where Diwali celebrations take place. In the district of Saramacca, activities include a 2-day float parade, similar to what takes place in Guyana, with heavily decorated trucks and actors dressed up as mythological Hindu characters. In Nikiri, there is a cultural program and a street parade where participants from various school groups dressed in uniforms walk through the streets with torches and banners chanting religious slogans as they follow small decorated floats in vehicles. Music and drumming add to the excitement as well. And in the capital, Paramaribo, there is a grand Diwali celebration at Independence Square. The area is filled with onlookers, and on stage there are performances and dramatizations, with some actors even being flown from cranes above the audience. Also at the site is the Suriname Dia, which is lit for a week leading up to the big day of Diwali. And that's our quick look at Diwali in Suriname. I'm Shamji, and this has been WESN's Diwali Passport.
If these walls could talk, they'd